Captain Daniel Wright stood before the Arcturian High Council, trying not to show his amazement at the vast crystal chamber. The room sparkled with colors he had never seen before, and the 13 council members sat in floating chairs that seemed to be made of pure light. Everything about their civilization screamed advanced technology, which made their request even more surprising. "You're saying that in 10,000 years, you never developed any weapons?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. The head counselor, an elderly Arcturian named Veros, nodded. "We evolved past violence long ago. When we met other species, they had done the same. The concept of warfare became foreign to us." He paused, his silver eyes reflecting worry. "Until the Kraxan arrived." Lieutenant Laura Bennett stood at a nearby console, studying the technical readouts the Arcturians had shared. The technology was incredible. Energy shields that could stop asteroids, drives that could bend space itself, medical systems that could rebuild entire organs. But none of it had been designed with combat in mind. "Your shields," she said, pointing to the display. "They're perfect for stopping natural threats, but they have regular energy patterns. Any decent military engineer could find the frequency and punch right through them." The council members looked at each other with surprise. This basic concept of military engineering had never occurred to them. "Tell us about these Kraxan," Daniel said, drawing their attention back. "What makes them different from other species?" A younger council member named Lyra spoke up. "They evolved from pack predators, like your wolves. But unlike humans, who learned to balance aggression with cooperation, they'd never lost their drive to dominate. They see the galaxy as their hunting ground." Laura pulled up another display, this one showing Kraxan ship movements. "They're methodical. Each conquest gives them more resources for the next. Classic empire-building strategy." She looked at Daniel. "We've seen this pattern hundreds of times in Earth's history." The council chamber grew quiet as the Arcturians processed this. The idea that humans had seen this type of behavior before, had dealt with it countless times, seemed to both horrify and fascinate them. "This is why we need you," Veros said. "Your species understands things we cannot. When we look at a shield generator, we see a way to protect from solar radiation. You immediately see its weaknesses in combat. When we see Kraxan movements, we see chaos. You see familiar patterns." Daniel walked to the center of the chamber, his footsteps echoing. "We can help you. We can teach you to defend yourselves. But you need to understand, this won't be easy. We're not just talking about technology. We're talking about changing how your people think." "What do you mean?" Lyra asked. "Defense isn't just about having weapons," Laura explained. "It's about strategy, tactics, being able to think like your opponent. It's about making hard choices and living with them." Daniel nodded. "We can modify your shields, build weapons that work with your technology. But more importantly, we need to teach you how to use them, how to think like warriors while keeping your peaceful nature." The council members discussed among themselves in their musical language. Finally, Veros turned back to the humans. "We accept. We will learn your ways of war, not to conquer, but to protect. What do you need from us?" "First," Daniel said, "we need to establish a joint command structure. Your technology, our military experience. Second, we need to begin training programs. And third," he looked at Laura, who nodded in agreement, "we need to start adapting your technology for defense. Immediately." "The Kraxan have never been stopped," Lyra said softly. "They've conquered 12 systems in the past year alone." Daniel smiled slightly. "They've never faced humans before. We've spent thousands of years fighting each other, learning, adapting. Now we can use that knowledge to help keep peace in the galaxy. It's time to show them what happens when they pick a fight with the wrong species." As the council session ended, Laura caught up with Daniel in the crystal hallway. "Do you think we can really do this? Turn a completely peaceful species into warriors?" Daniel watched a group of Arcturian children playing in a nearby garden, their laughter pure and innocent. "We're not turning them into warriors," he said firmly. We're teaching them to protect that innocence. Sometimes knowing how to fight is what keeps you from having to. Dr. Benjamin Carter watched in amazement as the Arcturian energy core powered up. The lab hummed with potential, blue light dancing across the walls. Next to him, Chief Engineer Susan Morgan adjusted the power settings on what used to be a standard Earth defense laser. The combination of human weapons design and Arcturian power systems was something entirely new. "Ready for the test?" Susan asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Ben nodded, but before he could speak, their Arcturian colleague Terran rushed into the lab, holding a datapad. "Dr. Carter, you must see this human document I found. It's called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. How did we not know about this?" Ben smiled. What seemed like basic military knowledge to humans was revolutionary to the Arcturians. That's just the beginning. Wait until you read about Napoleon or study modern special forces tactics. In the 3 weeks since the alliance began, the Arcturians had been devouring human military history. They were shocked to learn that even children on Earth knew basic concepts of strategy and tactical thinking from playing games and reading stories. "The power core is stable," Susan reported, checking her readings. "Terran, want to see how your people's energy technology works in a weapon?" Terran looked nervous but nodded. The Arcturians were still getting used to the idea of creating tools for combat. Ben input the firing sequence, and the modified laser hummed to life. The test target was a block of metal with the same composition as Kraxan ship hulls. When Ben pulled the trigger, a beam of pure white light shot out. Instead of the usual red laser blast, this beam pierced through the metal like it was paper, leaving edges that glowed blue. "That's 10 times more powerful than our standard lasers," Susan said, checking the data. "And it only used 5% of the power core's energy." Terran stared at the hole in the target. "All this time, we could have made weapons this powerful, but we never even thought about it. We used these power cores for cities and ships, never for defense." "That's not a bad thing," Ben said gently. "Your people chose peace. There's honor in that, but now you need to learn to protect that peace." The door opened and Commander Mills walked in with Captain Wright. They had just returned from a strategy meeting with the Arcturian High Council. "How's the weapons integration going?" Alexander asked, examining the test target with interest. "Better than we hoped," Susan replied. "The Arcturian power systems are incredible. They just needed someone who understood weapons to show them how to use them." Daniel picked up one of the training manuals they had created. "The Council is amazed by all this. They said that what we consider basic combat training would qualify as advanced tactical knowledge for most species in the galaxy. It's not just the weapons," Terran added. "The way humans think about conflict, the strategies you develop. Yesterday I learned about something called flanking maneuvers, such a simple concept, but we never considered it." Alexandra watched as another test shot destroyed a target. "The Kraxan think they're the only species that understands warfare. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Ben pulled up a holographic display showing their progress. Dozens of human Arcturian hybrid weapons were in development. The Arcturians' advanced sensors were being modified to detect stealth ships. Their shields were being redesigned with randomized frequencies to prevent enemies from finding weak points. "We're not just giving them weapons," Susan said. "We're teaching them how to think defensively, how to predict enemy movements, how to plan counterattacks." "The Council has approved the creation of a joint military command," Daniel added. "We're going to start training their people in combat tactics next week." Alexandra studied the weapons designs. "How long until everything is ready?" "The first wave of defensive systems will be operational in 5 days," Ben said. "After that, we can start upgrading their fleet." "Good," Alexander replied, "because according to our scouts, the Kraxan are getting closer. They're about to learn that humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't just technology or resources, it's the knowledge of how to fight back against bullies." As they continued their work, Ben realized that humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as teachers and protectors. Their long history of warfare, which many had seen as a curse, was becoming their greatest gift to the stars. The alert sirens woke everyone on the Arcturian colony of New Hope. Red lights flashed across the night sky as 3 Kraxan warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They appeared like dark shadows against the stars, their hulls covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. Commander Alexandra Mills stood on the bridge of the Earth Arcturian defense ship Star Guardian, watching the enemy approach. This was the moment they had prepared for. "Status report," she called out. "Kraxan ships are in attack formation," Lieutenant Christopher Hayes reported from his tactical station. "They're not even trying to hide their intentions. They think this is going to be easy." Alexandra smiled. The Kraxan had no idea what was waiting for them. Launched the strike teams, just like we practiced. 5 small ships slipped away from the Star Guardian, their new stealth systems making them almost invisible. Christopher led the strike team, his heart beating fast but steady. The humans had taught the Arcturians about guerrilla warfare, about hitting hard and fast where the enemy least expected it. The Kraxan commander's voice boomed across all channels. "Attention, Arcturian colony. Your defenses are weak. Your technology cannot save you. Surrender now." Alexandra pressed a button on her chair. "This is Commander Mills of the Earth Defense Force. The colony is under our protection. Leave now or face the consequences." There was a pause, then laughter came through the speakers. "Humans, the primitive species thinks they can challenge us. This will be even easier than we thought." The first Kraxan ship fired its weapons, but instead of hitting defenseless buildings, their shots splashed harmlessly against the new shield system Susan and Ben had designed. The random frequency changes made it impossible for the enemy to find a weak point. "Now," Alexandra commanded. Christopher's strike team sprang into action. His ships darted between the Kraxan vessels, firing precise shots at their engines and weapon systems. The new hybrid weapons cut through their armor like it was cloth. "What is this?" the Kraxan commander demanded as his ships tried and failed to hit the nimble strike craft. "These are not Arcturian tactics." "You're right," Christopher replied, his ship spinning past their flagship's bridge. "These are human tactics. We call this a hit-and-run attack." The Kraxan ships tried to coordinate their defense, but they had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Their weapons were powerful but slow. Their ships were strong but couldn't turn quickly. Everything they knew about warfare was based on overwhelming force, not speed and surprise. Alexandra watched as the battle unfolded exactly as they had planned. "Launch the second wave," she ordered. More ships joined the fight, each one crewed by humans and Arcturians working together. The Arcturians provided their advanced technology and perfect coordination, while the humans brought centuries of combat experience and tactical thinking. One of the Kraxan ships exploded as Christopher's team hit its power core. The second ship lost its engines and started drifting. The flagship tried to retreat, but found itself surrounded. "Impossible," the Kraxan commander said, his voice shaking. "You are prey species. You cannot defeat us." "That's where you're wrong," Alexandra replied. "Humans aren't prey or predators. We're survivors. We've spent thousands of years learning how to fight against stronger enemies, and now we're teaching others to do the same." The Kraxan flagship surrendered 10 minutes later. As Christopher's team returned to the Star Guardian, cheers broke out across the colony. The Arcturians had never won a battle against the Kraxan before. Now they had not just won, they had done it without losing a single ship. In the aftermath, Alexandra found Christopher looking out a window at the damaged Kraxan ships. "Good work out there," she said. "How did it feel, making history?" "It felt right," he replied. "All those war games I played as a kid, all those military histories I studied, I never thought they would help save an alien civilization." Alexandra nodded. "The galaxy's about to learn something important about humans. We don't just fight wars, we master them." and now were using that mastery to protect peace. Below them, Arcturian children were already playing games based on the battle, pretending to be the brave pilots who had protected their homes. They were learning what humans had known for centuries. Sometimes you had to fight to keep the peace. Major Matthew Clark walked through the halls of the newly established War College on Arcturus Prime. The building mixed Arcturian crystal architecture with Earth-style military practicality. In each classroom, human instructors taught Arcturian officers about the art of warfare. He stopped at one room where Officer Amy Peterson was teaching a class about ancient Earth battles. The Arcturian students watched with wide silver eyes as she showed them a hologram of the Battle of Thermopylae. 300 Spartans held off an army of thousands, Amy explained, pointing to the narrow pass. This is what we call a bottleneck. When your enemy is stronger, you can use the environment to take away their advantage. An Arcturian student raised his hand. But instructor, space has no bottlenecks. There are no mountains in space. Amy smiled. That's what we want the Kraxan to think. But asteroid fields, gravity wells, radiation zones, these are all space bottlenecks. We just need to learn how to use them. Matthew continued his walk, passing another classroom where an instructor was explaining guerrilla warfare using examples from Earth's history. The Arcturians were learning about hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and the importance of stealing enemy resources. In the combat simulation room, he found a group of Arcturian pilots practicing new flight patterns. Their natural grace and quick minds made them excellent pilots once they understood the principles of combat flying. "Look at this, Major," one of the flight instructors called out. He pointed to a screen showing practice results. They've mastered formation flying in just 2 weeks. It took human pilots months to learn these patterns. Matthew nodded, proud of their progress. They have the skills. They just needed to learn how to use them for defense. He entered his own classroom, where senior Arcturian officers waited for his lecture on strategy. Today's lesson was about something they found fascinating: the human concept of deception in warfare. "Your technology is more advanced than ours," Matthew began, "but the Kraxans still beat you. Why? Because they understand something you didn't. War is not just about weapons. It's about mindset." He pulled up images from various Earth conflicts. Sun Tzu said all warfare is based on deception. When we fought each other on Earth, we learned that the strongest army doesn't always win. The smartest one does. The Arcturian officers took notes eagerly. One of them, Commander Lyra, spoke up. "Is this why humans practice something called war games?" "To learn strategy." "Exactly," Matthew replied. "On Earth, even children play games that teach military thinking. Capture the flag, chess, video games. They all build strategic minds." In another part of the building, Amy had moved on to teaching about psychological warfare. "Fear," she explained, "can be more powerful than any weapon. The Kraxan use fear by appearing strong, but we can use their own fear against them." She showed videos from the recent battle at New Hope Colony. "See how they panicked when they couldn't predict our movements, when we didn't fight the way they expected. That's psychological warfare." Matthew ended his class with a practical exercise. The Arcturian officers had to plan a defense of their homeworld using their new knowledge. He watched as they worked together, combining human tactical thinking with their advanced technology. Later, he met with Amy in the teacher's lounge. "How are they progressing?" he asked. "Better than we expected," she replied. "They're natural learners, and they're starting to understand something important, that being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless." Matthew looked out the window at the Arcturian capital city. In the distance, he could see their first military base under construction. The peaceful species was changing, not to become warriors, but to become protectors. "The Kraxan think they know warfare," he said, "but they only know brute force. They've never faced an enemy that understands the art of war. Never fought someone who knows that the greatest victory is the battle not fought." Amy nodded. "We're not just teaching them to fight. We're teaching them to think, and that's something the Kraxen have never had to deal with before. Outside, a group of young Arcturians practiced combat moves in the courtyard. Their movements were graceful but purposeful, each strike and block carefully planned. They were learning to be warriors while keeping their peaceful nature, a balance that only humans had mastered before. Colonel Patricia Rodriguez stared at the tactical display aboard the Earth Defense Command Station. 50 Kraxen warships had just appeared at the edge of the solar system. This wasn't a raid or a test. It was an invasion fleet. "They're done playing games," she said to her staff. They finally realized that Earth is the real threat to their empire. The Kraxen ships moved in a tight formation, their weapons charged. Their losses against the human Arcturian forces had made them angry. Now they wanted to eliminate humanity before Earth could teach more species how to fight back. Message from the Kraxen fleet. Lieutenant Eric Foster reported. "They're demanding our immediate surrender. They say they'll spare Earth if we stop helping other species and give them our military knowledge." Patricia laughed. "They still don't understand us at all. Send our response. Come and get it." The defense plan they had prepared was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. As the Kraxen fleet approached Mars, they found no resistance. No ships came out to meet them. No weapons fired. Where are their defenders? The Kraxen admiral demanded. Have they fled? Then Patricia gave the signal. Hidden bases on Mars' moons powered up. Asteroid bases that looked like mining stations revealed weapon ports. A dozen ships emerged from hiding spots in the asteroid belt, while more rose from bases hidden under the red dust of Mars. Multiple targets appearing. The Kraxen sensors officer shouted. "They're all around us." "You see," Patricia broadcast to the Kraxen fleet, "while you were watching us teach the Arcturians, we were preparing. Every defeat you suffered taught us more about how you fight. Now it's time to show you what humanity can really do." The battle began. Human ships attacked from all directions, using every trick they had taught the Arcturians and more. Smaller ships darted between the Kraxen vessels, hitting engines and weapons. Larger ships provided covering fire, their hybrid weapons cutting through Kraxen shields. The Kraxen tried to maintain their formation, but Patricia had studied their tactics. They always stayed together, relying on their combined firepower. She had planned for this. "Launch the mine swarms," she ordered. Thousands of small devices filled space around the Kraxen fleet. Some were weapons, others just empty shells. But the Kraxen had to treat each one as a threat. Their formation broke apart as ships tried to avoid the mines. "They're splitting up," Eric reported. "Just like you said they would." Patricia nodded. "Begin Phase 2. The real trap was sprung. As the Kraxen ships scattered, they found themselves pulled into carefully planned killing zones. Human ships attacked from hidden positions, using the tactics that had won wars on Earth for centuries. Some Kraxen ships were caught in crossfires. Others found themselves chased into asteroid fields where more human ships waited. A few tried to retreat, only to find their escape routes blocked. "This is impossible," the Kraxen admiral shouted over the comm. "You are one primitive world. You cannot defeat an empire." "That's where you're wrong," Patricia replied calmly. "We're not primitive. We're specialists. Your empire conquered through brute force. But humans, we turned war into an art form. We learned from every battle, every war, every defeat and victory." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, half the Kraxen fleet was destroyed. The rest had surrendered. Earth's casualties were minimal. The careful planning and superior tactics had paid off. As Patricia looked at the aftermath, she thought about how far humanity had come. They had gone from fighting each other to protecting the galaxy. Their knowledge of warfare, gained through centuries of conflict, had become a shield for peaceful species. "Send word to the Arcturian Council," she ordered. "Tell them Earth stood its ground. The Kraxen won't be threatening anyone else for a long time." Eric smiled as he sent the message. "Do you think they understand now? Why they should never have attacked Earth? They're learning. Patricia said, watching the Kraxan ships power down their weapons. Just like we did, over thousands of years of warfare. Sometimes the best way to keep peace is to be very, very good at war. Commander Alexandra Mills stood in the Great Crystal Hall of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 30 different species filled the room. The Arcturians sat proudly in their section, no longer the timid diplomats they had once been. Even a small group of Kraxan delegates attended, though they kept their eyes down. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Earth. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The High Speaker, a tall being made of shifting colors, raised his hands for silence. We are here today to recognize Earth's contribution to galactic peace. Commander Mills, please step forward. Alexandra walked to the center of the hall. She wore her formal Earth Defense Force uniform, polished and precise. The medals on her chest caught the light from the crystal walls. When humanity first reached the stars, she began, we thought we were behind everyone else. Our technology was simpler. We had a history of warfare, while other species had known only peace. We were ashamed of our past. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of different species. But we learned something important. Our history of conflict taught us lessons that the galaxy needed. We learned not just how to fight, but when to fight, and most importantly, why to fight. The Arcturian Council leader stood up. Before humans came, we were helpless against aggressors. Now we can protect ourselves. Earth taught us that being peaceful doesn't mean being weak. From their corner, the Kraxan delegates shifted uncomfortably. Their empire had shrunk to a quarter of its former size. Not through war, but because other species had learned to stand up to them. Humans are different from all of us. A crystalline being from the Rigel system said, they understand both war and peace. They fight not for glory or territory, but to protect others. Alexandra nodded. On Earth, we have a saying, those who want peace must prepare for war. We never wanted to be warriors. We wanted to explore, to learn, to grow. But we learned that sometimes you need to fight to protect those things. The High Speaker raised a glowing hand. The Council recognizes Earth as the protector of galactic peace. From this day forward, the Earth Defense Force will train and support the new Galactic Defense Alliance. Cheers filled the Crystal Hall. Species that had never dared to stand up to bullies were now ready to defend themselves. The Arcturians had already begun teaching other peaceful races what they had learned from Earth. Later, Alexandra stood on a viewing platform with Daniel Wright and Laura Bennett, looking out at the stars. Below them, ships from dozens of species docked at the station. Some came for training, others for protection, all because of what Earth had taught them. Did you ever think it would turn out like this? Laura asked. That our history of warfare would end up protecting galactic peace. Daniel smiled. It makes sense, in a way. We learned our lessons the hard way through centuries of conflict. Now we can help others learn without going through the same pain. They watched as a group of Arcturian ships practiced combat maneuvers with Earth instructors. Their movements were precise and confident, nothing like the uncertain species they had first met. The Kraxan called us the gods of war. Alexandra said quietly. They meant it as an insult, but they didn't understand. We're not gods of war because we love fighting. We're gods of war because we learned how to end wars, how to fight only when necessary, and how to fight well enough that others think twice about starting conflicts. A message flashed on her communicator. Another peaceful species requesting Earth's help with defense training. The galaxy had changed. Humanity's gift wasn't violence or combat skills, but the wisdom earned through centuries of learning the hard way. We're teaching them more than just fighting, Laura observed. We're teaching them confidence, strategy, the ability to stand up for themselves. That's the real lesson of Earth's history, Alexandra said, watching the stars. True peace doesn't come from never fighting. It comes from knowing how to fight, when to fight, and most importantly, what to fight for. Around them, the galaxy spun on, safer than it had ever been. Humanity had found its place among the stars not as conquerors or victims, but as teachers and protectors. They were the gods of war not because they loved battle, but because they had learned to use the art of war to protect the gift of peace.